The Suicide Squad, despite being a team put together to stop bad guys, aren't the nicest of folks. These guys have taken extra care to ensure the entire villain bucket list has been well and truly ticked off. I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture Comics, and here are the 10 worst things the Suicide Squad has ever done. Number 10. Rick Flag gets the team killed. The cleanest guy on the team, as well as its leader, Rick Flag is the quintessential honest soldier, a man devoted to defending his country no matter the cost. His heroics eventually land him the duty of leading this dangerous band of villains turned soldiers. However, Mr. Flag isn't always the straight-up honest patriot he's made out to be. During the Doom Patrol and Suicide Squad number 1, Flag leads his forces on a daring rescue operation in Nicaragua. The goal was to rescue Hawk, who had been captured by the bad guys. The mission goes terribly. Everything that could have gone wrong basically ends up going wrong. In the end, the entire team gets killed, and the main reason for the disaster was Rick's inept decisions as leader. Actually, that's not entirely correct. There was one survivor, the brave, patriotic leader. He got everyone killed other than himself. Number 9. Poison Ivy traps souls inside a murderous plant. As a part of DC's 1 year later event, the plant-loving eco-terrorist supervillain was up to her usual stuff. She created a monstrous plant that fed on human beings. As the number of bodies fed to this demonic flora increased, though, the creature took on an unexpected form. Not only did it start incorporating the behavior patterns of the people it consumed into its own, but the plant also captured the consciousness of all these people, holding them captive inside its body. It took on the name Harvest and created a bizarre hybrid personality from an amalgamation of all the people it swallowed up. Think Little Shop of Horrors, but like 25 times worse. These poor people, not only were they captured and brutally eaten alive by a plant monster, but afterwards they couldn't even die properly. Number 8. Amanda Waller's coercion techniques. The very inception of the group came about as a result of a horrifying display of cruelty and disregard for human life. In just about every version of the team's origin, Amanda Waller, aka the Suicide Squad's scheming founder, forced these villains to band together and do the government's dirty work. How did she pull it off? Well, with a threat of execution, of course. As bad as that sounds, and is, it was the manner in which she established those conditions that truly blows the mind. Waller first scouts convicted inmates for fighting potential. Once she finds someone who meets her standards, she has the prospective member implanted with some kind of explosive material. If they even thought about refusing her, their brains would no longer be inside their head. The whip is constantly twirled over their heads, as Waller sends them on one dangerous mission after another. Number 7. Weasel and Thinker kill one another. It's essential for any kind of super team that they share a strong bond. Good teamwork is vital for heroes and villains alike, but sadly the Suicide Squad didn't get that memo. Case in point, the Thinker and Weasel. The primary nemesis of both these villains was Martin Stein, aka Firestorm. You would expect that having a common enemy was reason enough for them to get along or even work together. That wasn't the case though. Weasel and Thinker were always up each other's throats. Things finally came to a head during the Doom Patrol and Suicide Squad story arc, when Weasel used the power of his telepathic helmet to manipulate Rick Flag, the same Rick Flag who normally serves as the Suicide Squad's field commander, into killing his rival. Not to be outdone, Thinker uses his remaining strength to then mind control Flag into murdering Weasel as well. It's nowhere near as funny as the fate that befalls the character in the new movie, but it's still pretty weird all the same. Number 6. James Gordon Jr. turns kids into psychopaths. The Gordon family are famous for having heroism ingrained into their very genes. James Sr. has fought valiantly against the overwhelming tide of evil that constantly threatens Gotham, and Barbara became Batgirl and served as one of Batman's most trusted allies. Unfortunately, not all of James's kids fell so close to the tree. His son, James Gordon Jr., is a Suicide Squad member and an all-around terrible person. Plus, he has that whole anime glasses thing going for him. You know, the thing where it reflects? It's not cool and it's pretty creepy. His inner demons had started baring their fangs while he was still a child. Still, when he returned to Gotham all grown up, as a part of the brilliant Black Mirror storyline, his family were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Things looked on the up when he started working in children's medicine, but little did they know the cures he was cooking up were the stuff of nightmares. Turns out James Jr. was developing drugs that reduced the levels of compassion in the developing brain, all the way down to the level of a cold-blooded killer. Gordon Jr. was trying to raise a whole new generation of killers, which is horrifying in more ways than one. Number 5. Killer Frost's Manhattan killing spree. Someone who survives by stealing the life force of others is expected to have done some pretty terrible things. Killer Frost lives up to her name and billing in every way. Her powers of sucking all the warmth out of others to fuel her own body is utterly terrifying. Even scarier though is the fact that she will do anything to satisfy that one need. The most tragic example of which was the Manhattan Rampage, which took place during the 1 year later storyline. Teaming up with the equally diabolical Mr. Freeze, her goal here was to draw out Firestorm. The blazing superhero was not only her chief nemesis, but also a near limitless source of heat for her to feast on. The plan wasn't as simple as that though. Once Firestorm came out, Frost and Freeze used their advanced tech to launch the superhero and his icy nemesis into space. Once there, Frost's goal was to absorb all the heat from the sun. As per usual, the villains fail in their plan, so much death and destruction for absolutely nothing. Number 4. Captain Boomerang eats his son. This one is genuinely hard to describe. Perhaps the most shocking thing about it is that the one committing the gnarly atrocity isn't someone like Joker or Doomsday, it's Captain Bloody Boomerang. Generally speaking, Digger Harkness is seen as one of the weaker members of the Suicide Squad. Sure, he throws killer boomerangs and all, but compared to the rest at least, his mean streak isn't the worst thing we've ever seen. On this occasion though, Harkness called upon all his demons and unleashed them for the whole world to witness. After being resurrected courtesy of the Black Lanterns, Harkness was driven by a ravenous hunger. Before long, he turned to cannibalism. The one playing Pet Keeper though was his son Owen. Eventually, the hunger was too big for Owen to satiate, and Harkness consumed his own son. Lovely. Number 3. Deadshot kills his brother and mother. As told in the Deadshot miniseries, his parents hated each other, to the point that his dad was physically abusive towards his mum. This did not sit well with Deadshot and his brother, so they opted for the only way villains solve family issues: with murder. The two brothers plotted to kill their own father. Unfortunately, Deadshot hadn't quite become the master assassin yet, and the attempt was botched. His brother was the first to try his luck, but his attack only left their old man severely injured. Deadshot then stepped in to finish the job, but his failure was even more spectacular, as he somehow ended up shooting his brother instead. No matter how many bullseyes he'd go on to hit, nothing could ever wash away this blemish on his villainous record. Oh, and later he'd go on to kill his mum too. Number 2. Harley Quinn blows up children. Harley Quinn might be one of the more sympathetic members of the Suicide Squad, but that doesn't mean she hasn't done some truly awful acts over the years. In Detective Comics number 23.2 from the New 52, I mean, where else would it be from, Harley Quinn lays out a plot where she distributes video games to kids, free of cost. Kids being kids are drawn to it like bees to honey. They proceed to take the games home and put them in to start having a good time, but unbeknownst to them, Harley had rigged those games with explosives. Those kids turned on those games to have a good time, but sadly it ended up in game over. For their lives. Not so anti-hero-y now, huh? And number 1. Black Manta murders an infant. Harley Quinn blowing up kids was awful. However, Black Manta somehow manages to top that by murdering an infant right in front of his father. The undersea villain, a pivotal member of the Suicide Squad and often the most responsible whenever he's on the team, was desperate to make Aquaman suffer. And what better way to torture a man than by using his family to get to him? Manta abducts Aquaman's infant son and places him in a container designed to suffocate the poor child. He then engineers a battle between the King of Atlantis and his elder offspring. By the time Aquaman could reach his son, the child was dead. This practically ruined Aquaman's entire family, as things could never be the same again. It's also worth noting that this wasn't some sort of deranged psychopath going on a rampage. This was a man perfectly capable of thought and perception, choosing to torture an infant for the sake of furthering a vendetta. So many lives wrecked, all thanks to Black Manta and his maniacal quest for revenge. And those are the 10 worst things the Suicide Squad members have ever done. Know of any other horrendous misdeeds from Task Force X's finest? Post them down in the comments below, drop the video a like if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to What Culture Comics so you don't miss another upload going forward. I've been Ewan, and until next time, keep reading comics, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Bye!